Welcome back to the Steep Stuff Podcast. I'm your host, James Lariello. And today I'm excited to welcome Meikael Beaudoin-Rousseau to the podcast. Super excited to have had Meika on for a conversation. I know Meika's been we've been trying to put this together for a minute now, and it's been kind of just a bunch of ups and downs and false starts with Meika really struggling with injury over the past year and a half to 2 years. So it was really exciting to have Meika on to come over for a conversation and just chat all about, his struggles and his ability to make it back. Meika just recently finished in the top 10 of the Pikes Peak ascent, as well as took a second place just behind Cam Smith, who's having a killer season right now at the Rut VK. We talked a lot about Meika's just motivators. We talked a lot about his past growing up in California in the Bay Area. What gets him excited, as well as hobbies. We talked a lot about fishing and who he is as a person outside of running. And then we talked about the mental game of running. Meika is just an incredibly inspiring human. For those of you who don't know the story, dude got himself fit off of a handbike trying to get ready for a slew of races over the last 2 years, including the Broken Arrow VK in 2024, where he finished just behind Jim Walmsley and battled Christian Allen out for that third spot, as well as podium finishes at races like the Rut VK just behind Cam Smith, who's having a banner season, as well as many others. So Meika is just one incredibly inspiring human. I hope you guys take a lot away from this episode. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. Like I said, we get into Meika's motivators, his whys, what interests him, and just where he wants the sport to go. So without further ado, Meikael Beaudoin-Rousseau.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
Meikael Beaudoin-Rousseau? Close?
Close enough, yes.
All right. Sorry, but you can. All right. How do you pronounce the last name? You can tell it for the audience so that way they can get it correct.
That would be Beaudoin-Rousseau.
Oh, dude, I love it. I wish I had a French accent or like some semblance of it. I got to. So, welcome to the podcast, man. This is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. I know we had kind of put it off after last year on Pikes, and I think this is as good a time ever to have you on the podcast. So I'm excited to have you, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. And yeah, it feels like this has been a long time coming because we've been talking about it for a while, and then a bunch of stuff happened and with the injury and everything. And so I'm glad to finally be on and get to chat with you.
Yeah, man. Dude, it's kind of crazy. I feel like you've been kind of working through this knee injury for a long time, but have still been able to kind of throw in races and like put stuff on the calendar. Maybe talk a little bit about what you've been working through and kind of going through over the last 2 years.
Yeah, for sure. So took a pretty bad fall in the Broken Arrow Sky Race back in 2024. And I was actually coming back from another much more minor injury going into that. So I didn't quite have the training block I wanted to. But just sliced my knee open, like down to the bone. And initially we thought it was like, just like classic trail running fall, like need a ton of stitches, but like, things are going to be like good again, like pretty soon after. And it was not that. I think the tendon attachment and the quad tendon were also impacted in the fall. And so, I've tried to come back. I think this would be my 6th time currently since that injury. And yeah, fingers crossed that this one's the one that gets me back to where I want to be. But I've had a lot of, yeah, mixed builds in that process where I, am able to get back for a couple of races and then things kind of go downhill from there. And I'm happy to talk more about like the training and like the thought process behind that more too. But yeah, it's definitely been a roller coaster. And I will say I'm grateful to have gotten races in at all through a lot of this because, yeah, a lot of those races that I've done have like required very creative training methodologies.
Let's talk about that. Let's get into it. I know we'll introduce you and go into your background later, but like I gotta ask about the handbike and how you've been able to just accumulate fitness and even staying fit, given the fact that you've had limited usage of the knee.
Oh, absolutely. It's required a lot of creativity and a lot of mental grit, I would say. I mean, you think about like every like one of the most heinous forms of cross training that an athlete would have to do to stay in shape. And that's what I've been limited to with the nature of this injury. Like I would love to be able to bike and like spend lots of time outdoors, but the reality of it is that like knee flexion and especially putting out power under when the knee is flexed has been like one of the major limiting factors. And so I actually can't really bike. I mean, I'm getting there, but like in the definitely in the most acute stage of the injury, I couldn't like bike at all. And so I was doing initially a lot of arm biking and arms only swimming. So I would do like up to, I think my longest day I did 3 hours of total arms only cardio. I would usually like mix it up like an hour of like arm biking and then an hour of arms only swimming. But I would do like occasionally like 2.5 hour arm bikes or at one point I did like a 3 hour arms only swim. And yeah, I mean, that was like in the worst stage of it. I also did a good amount of like one-legged biking to try like after the accident too, to try to like keep my legs strong, even though I couldn't do anything with one of them. And then from there progressed to like at this stage right now, like elliptical is the main form of cross training where I get my volume.
Wow. Can you, I mean, you can go into this as much as you'd like to. Just, I think it's really important to paint a picture for the audience, just mentally what that must have gone through. Not just getting injured, but also getting injured, having a lot of false starts to come back and then have to go back down into the pain cave and restart this process. How has that been mentally? It can't be easy.
Oh, it's the hardest thing. I would say like, yeah, the past year and a half has probably been one of the hardest, or has required the most mental gymnastics from me to just stay positive and stay in it. It's, yeah, the uncertainty is definitely the worst part of it because, I mean, you have all these stories of horrible injuries in sports and, sometimes it's career ending, sometimes people defy the odds and make these amazing comebacks. And, sometimes you look at those stories and it seems inevitable in hindsight that like, oh, if you never give up, like you're going to get through it and you're going to get back to where you were. But the reality of it is like in the moment when you're in it, when you're like in the thick of it with the uncertainty, like it really doesn't feel that way. And you don't know if it's a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year, like you don't know how long it'll be. But I think one of the things I've really anchored onto during that process is, the beautiful part of not knowing is that you could wake up the next day and that could be the first day of an upward trajectory that gets you back to where you want to be. And so what I've constantly been doing throughout this process is just waking up every single day, believing that that day could be the first day of the comeback.
Dude, I love that. That's a beautiful answer. And I appreciate you being candid. I can't imagine, especially, I mean, as athletes, we identify so much with running. I mean, you are someone that's done it for a very long time, if not a large chunk of your existence. So one, I find it cool that you also have other hobbies, and we'll talk about that as well. But two, I just love the mindset and your ability to kind of lock in and believe that your best days are still ahead of you, because they absolutely are. one thing I do find really interesting too is, dude, how are you able to get that fit and or at least like maintain your fitness to show up at like the Rut VK and still get second place and show up at Pikes Peak and still run in the top 10, given that you've had long layoffs in between? Like how, like, I know you talked about like the hand crank and the bike and stuff like that, but how are you able to like understand like where your fitness is during that time? Like get confidence through some of these workouts and kind of understand like, okay, like I can show up at Pikes and still run a top 10 time, or I could show up at the Rut and still give Cam, who's had a great season, an amazing season, still be able to compete with him. Like, how have you been able to kind of keep tabs on fitness like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's definitely challenging. I would say for me, like I love racing so much. Like trail running is my favorite thing in the world, and racing is my favorite part of trail running. And to me, just getting to race, getting to do this, like that's the most important part. And so, when I'm lining up on the start line of a race, like as long as I'm not taking any health risks, I'm not like necessarily afraid of like having a performance that could be embarrassing compared to what my top form would be if I was like fully healthy and training normally. And so, yeah, I think I just show up with the intent of giving 100% of what I have to give on the day, no matter what. And, that turns out to work pretty well sometimes, but there's also like definitely a lot of hard work that goes behind that. I like, even though I'm not running a lot of volume, I'm still getting like about 2 hours or more of aerobic volume every single day, training in creative ways. I'm doing like, hours and hours of PT and strength every week. I'm doing all the little things that I can to stay in shape and build fitness in ways that are like not necessarily running mileage related. And I'm still doing like very hard workouts. And honestly, that's one of the beautiful things about trail running is like it rewards fitness. You don't like, obviously you need running specific fitness, but if you're fit, like you're probably going to do all right. And yeah, that's one of the parts of the sport that I'm most grateful for, especially with this injury process.
That's so crazy, man. On the topic of the mental battle and your ability, one of the things I just admire so much about you, and I've got to see it now kind of twice in a row on back-to-back Pikes years, where, dude, you could just find this, like, you could go into the well and just, like, live there. Like, you've almost, like, what was it? Last year, you, like, your SpO2 levels were, like, super low and you, like, passed out, like, 2 years in a row. Is that right? Or something like that?
Yeah, the people in the Pikes Peak med tent know me quite well.
Dude, talk about, like, I mean, I've had it a couple times where I've gone so hard, like the vision started closing in, but I've never actually like been able to force myself to pass out, like going as hard as I possibly can. How were you able to do that? Like, I like, it's just all the mental things, like trying to tell you like, hey buddy, slow down. And you're just able to override that. Like, how are you able to do that?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think there's something about Pikes. I don't know if it's related to my physiology but I've always struggled up there in the high country. Like, I mean, I've done it 3 years in a row now, and all 3 years I've ended up in the med tent after the past two. And I mean, this year in particular have definitely been the most dramatic. Like this year they had to hook me up to pure oxygen because I was just like, yeah, crazy low SpO2 levels and like didn't really know where I was and like kind of like falling asleep. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I just love pushing myself and just, yeah, giving everything I have no matter what. And so that's kind of always what anchors my racing mentality. And, with this year in particular, like something just felt wrong from the gun. Like I've never had that feeling in a race before, but like we were like half a mile in the race and I was wondering if I should drop out because the effort level just felt way off what it should be. And I mean, I know I'm not in my best shape, but there was just something else that was wrong that day. And what I kept coming back to in those early miles as I was like, mentally trying to decide if it was a good idea to keep going was that like, I haven't been able to do this for almost a year. And so just the gratefulness of being able to race is huge. And so even if I'm not having the best day, like I'm going to give absolutely everything I have and make the most of it.
Wow. Yeah. Dude, your brain, like, you need to be studied. You need a white paper written on you. It's so cool. Where are we at now? If you don't mind being candid, like, about where you're at with the injury, do you think you're on the back end of it now? I mean, you've been able to throw in 3 races now this season, or at least on this back end of September. Like, where are you at now with the comeback?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, all honesty, it's hard to say, like, people like to say like, oh, like, he's back. And like, it's said with good intention, but there's almost a part of me that like cringes a little bit at that, because, I definitely don't feel back, both with my training and where I'm at. Like, I'm still having some chronic pain, and there's like definitely some neurological symptoms with the knee that we're still trying to tease out. Like, one of the really weird things with this injury is that I'll get this like very intense burning pain on the scar from the original accident. So it feels like somebody's pressing like hot iron against my skin. It's very, very intense. And that'll happen like during exercise, sometimes like randomly, like while sitting down, if clothing brushes against it. So there's that. And then there's also pain in the tendon. And yeah, it's been really hard to tease out like what pain I can ignore and what pain I need to pay attention to. Because as far as like MRIs and imaging goes, we've addressed most of the obvious things that are wrong with that area. I mean, I obviously have like still a good amount of scar tissue and like tendon thickening. And you look at my patella under ultrasound, it looks like somebody took like a spoon to the top of it and just scooped out a piece. But yeah, so it's hard to say. But I am optimistic that we've fixed a lot of the obvious things. And I'm hoping that, what's left is more of like a chronic pain neurological thing that can be worked through. So I am like, still eyeing some other races for the rest of 2025, and definitely have hopes of competing more. And yeah, I'm just really hopeful that I can just keep progressing slowly but surely. And then like, the most important thing is obviously just to have a full schedule in 2026.
Dude, I hope so, man. I'm rooting for you. I'm cheering for you. It'll be fun to have you back. Have you considered have you looked into like stem cells and stuff like that? I know that's a very common thing with a lot of professional athletes. Like, you see fighters go and get stem cells down in like South America and like Tijuana and stuff like that. I don't even know if that's like USADA or WADA, but like, it's an idea. I don't know.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, a couple of people have mentioned that to me, and I think, I mean, at least where I'm at right now, it's like, I'm going to see if this trajectory keeps going in a positive direction. And I think, if I run into more issues as I keep building things up, that might be something I'll consider for the end of this year before like hopefully being like fully good for 2026. But I mean, I've tried a lot of things. Like, I've seen like 8 different doctors for this, and I mean, countless more PTs, chiros, like body worker type people. And one of the hardest things has been that like from a pain perspective and like an imaging perspective, like there are things that are wrong with my knee and with that area from the fall, but there's like, it would almost be like, from a mental perspective, it would always be more comforting if it was like, oh, like you fractured your patella, or like, oh, like there's like you tore this like ligament or something, like we can fix that. And what a lot of it has been is like, okay, there's like a couple of these things that are like abnormal or like different and like potentially wrong with that area as a result of the fall, but those things aren't necessarily pathological. Like, for example, I have like this popping in my knee every time I bend it past a certain point because of like the scar tissue and like the tendon thickening that resulted from the accident. And so that's like not necessarily like it's not necessarily like that's not like causing the pain, but should it be something that like we try to fix? So there's been a lot of things like that where it's just like, yeah, a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, almost a lot of like weird gray area. Like you said, like It's one thing if it's a torn tendon or a broken bone, those things can be fixed, but it's when there's a lot of different little things that you can kind of address and play with, and you're not sure. It's just like, it creates a lot of uncertainty. So I can understand that. That's Yeah, dude, it's crazy that with all the medical technology we have these days, there's still some things that slip under the radar, and it's kind of difficult to figure out.
Totally. I mean, I think it's like a good reality check, as in with all things, that we often get a false sense of security in thinking that we know more than we do. But there's so much still out there that needs to be discovered and learned, and I mean, that's a cool part of it too.
It's true. It's very true. All right, let's shift focus a little bit. I want to learn more about you as the person. One of the things I found interesting, I was listening to a podcast that the Sub Hub did with you, and I didn't realize that you technically you're a tri-citizen, right? Like you're a citizen of the United States, France, and Canada. What's your background? Like, are you originally like, is your family French Canadian, or how did that come about?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And yeah, my family so I was actually born in California in the US, but I mean, my whole family is French Canadian, and like, aside from my parents, like everybody's in Quebec. And so I kind of got those nationalities through them. And yeah, French is my first language. It's what we speak at home. And yeah, it's cool to, have, I wish the family was a little bit closer, because Quebec's kind of on the other side of the continent, but we always make a trip out there every year, and it's cool to spend time over there. It's so green and beautiful and different from California and Colorado. So it's always fun spending time out there.
It is. It's beautiful. Have you bonded at all with teammate Remy Leroux, who lives in Quebec?
Yeah, we've chatted a good bit. It's fun to be able to talk in French to somebody on the Brooks team, and definitely looking forward to spending more time with him. I think we might connect. I'm hoping to run Canadian Champs coming up in October, so hoping to share some miles with him in Quebec when I'm over there.
That's a beautiful race. That's a great race that I know. I've contacted and talked with them a few times. How do you pronounce it? Is it DeFi de? I always say DeFi de Couleur, but I'm such a American. Like I don't know. How would you pronounce that?
I mean, if you were to say it in French, it would be Défi des couleurs.
Okay. All right. I'm not. I gotta improve.
You're good. You're crushing it.
I'm trying. Actually, there's a lot of need for improvement. So you're based out of Boulder now. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I moved to Colorado last year, and I've been based out of Boulder since then. It's just such a great place to train and live. I mean, you get altitude, like good trail access, and I mean, far and away, the best part is just the running community. Like, everybody here is just so hyped on the outdoors and running and trail running. And so, yeah, the community is incredible, and it's just great to be a part of it.
Dude, yeah, I love it. It's cool. Have you, not to shift gears too much, because I wanted to talk to you about like hobbies. One of the things I really admired about you, I come from a background, a lot of fishing. I grew up in South Florida, and a lot of deep sea fishing and estuary fishing and just cool stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I saw you doing a lot of it. Have you bonded at all with Taylor? I know Taylor Stack is like an insane fly fisherman. Like, it's like super into it. Have you guys gotten out to fly fish at all?
Not yet. We've been meaning to, and we've talked about it several times. He like, I feel like there's definitely like a super cool aspect of like combining running and fishing, where you just go to these beautiful alpine lakes and fish and then run back down. I actually don't have much of a background in fly fishing. Kind of growing up in California, did a ton of ocean fishing, ton of deep sea kayak fishing. That's probably my favorite kind of fishing, is just like going out in the kayak, like on the ocean, just like far from shore, and just like you just see and experience so much out there. But I do also do a lot of like spin fishing, freshwater fishing, and learning to fly fish has definitely been on the bucket list for a while. So I'm hoping, Taylor might be able to help me with that.
I think it's cool. He introduced me to some of these, like there's a couple races out here in Colorado where I think you're like measured, or you get like a certain time boost based off of not just distance, but also like the size of the fish that you catch, or the species, or something like that. It's kind of interesting. Like, definitely something, like if you're looking for like a different hobby out there, and this is for listeners too, like there's some actual races that involve fly fishing in Colorado and running, which is kind of different. So
Yeah, the flyathlons seem super cool.
Yeah, flyathlon. So that's what it's called. It's flyathlon. Okay,
Yeah, I think you have to fly fish. So that's another reason why I need to learn.
There you go. Yeah, you can win the running part. It's the fly fishing part. Let's talk a little bit more about dude. I mean, some of your stories were just incredible. I know for semi recently you'd posted a few of you just like ocean kayaking and stuff like that. Like, talk about those experiences. Like, is there anything that sticks out to you that's like, I don't know. It's different from running in the sense where it's a hobby. It's something else to do, but it almost like separates you and connects you a little bit more with nature. Whereas running, I feel like for all of us can be such a more of an intensive kind of thing. Does it ground you more? Like, what is it about fishing that connects you?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think with like pretty much everything in my life, it's just about like adventure and like living a cool story and like chasing those experiences that like are cool stories. And that's just led to a lot of different outdoor hobbies and activities. And yeah, fishing has always been one of my favorite things. Like from a young kid, like I ended up bonding with, like when I was like 5 years old, I like bonded with this like old fisherman at the farmer's market, like total like old man of the sea, like personality, like long white beard, like Santa Claus, looked like Santa Claus. And yeah, he took me out on his like boat a couple times fishing. And so, yeah, it's just like always been for me, just like a super fun way to engage with nature and like also put like food on the table that like comes from a source that's sustainable and that like, where it came from. And there's something very rewarding about like going out and, getting food for your family and then like cooking it. And yeah, like ocean kayak fishing I feel like embodies like all of those qualities for me of like, it's always an adventure out there. You're always going to see like tons of wildlife, like whales, dolphins, sea otters, sharks sometimes.
Have you bumped in any great whites out there?
I've seen several over the years, actually. Yeah.
That's cool.
The biggest one I've seen was about 13 feet.
It's bigger than the kayak, right? Like
it is bigger than the kayak. Yeah. But like for the most part, they just like, if you leave them alone, they leave you alone. But yeah, lots of magical experiences out there. Like I've had like humpback whales come like lunge feed just like a couple feet away from the kayak. Like they were like going after like this school of anchovies. And I was just like floating there. I was not fishing because I was just looking at the whales, but it's just like such a cool moment. And with dolphins too, like, yeah, I mean, I feel like the California coastline is just blessed with just so much cool wildlife. And it's just always like, you feel like very one with the ocean out there on a kayak. Like I would never want to go out there in like a motorboat. I mean, it would just be a different experience, but like with the kayak, you just feel like very close to the ocean. Like every wave moves the boat in a meaningful way that you like sometimes have to adjust for with the rudder to not get capsized and whatnot. So yeah, it's just a very grounding experience.
Interesting, dude. I got to try it. I mean, I don't know. Back home, my dad's got a couple kayaks, but I never go out with them. It's not the ocean kayak where you can like just use your feet. It's more so just like an actual, like you got to do the whole like canoe kayak thing.
Right.
But yeah, like it's a little more complicated, and the ocean is always a bit more rough there. Yeah. So interesting. What was it like growing up in California for you? I mean, from your background, it seems like you had access both to the Sierra and the ocean. It's had to have like really shaped who you are as a person today.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, yeah, growing up in California was such a blessing. And, even though the Bay Area isn't like, your stereotypical mountain town where like a lot of trail runners and mountain athletes come from, it just like afforded me the luxury of being able to do a lot of different outdoor hobbies. And it's like pretty nice year round, which is a plus because I love gardening and, yeah, growing I have this big garden back home where I would like grow a ton of fruits and veggies. So that was another like fun thing that California was awesome for. But yeah, I mean, like there's great trail running in the Bay Area and the Sierras are right there. And like my family was super outdoorsy. And so we would, go up to the Sierras like all the time growing up as a kid. And then a little bit like when I was in middle school, my family actually like got a small cabin up there. And so like starting then we would like literally be up there like every single weekend. And so, yeah, it was just like an amazing way, like just so many different outdoor activities, like right at your fingertips. And, growing up, I, didn't really spend any time on screens, never played video games. Like I didn't even have a smartphone until college. And so like truly every single second of free time that I had, I would direct towards doing something outdoors or learning something new. And yeah, just so many fond memories and incredible experiences from growing up there and having lots of time to do stuff outdoors. And I do think it really shaped me into who I am today.
So cool. Let's talk Stanford. What was it like going to, I mean, obviously I don't want to say it was in your backyard, but like in the greater San Francisco area, Stanford's not far. Palo Alto is relatively close. What was the recruitment process like to go run there? Or did you walk on? Like, how did the process go to run at Stanford?
Yeah, so I was recruited to go there, and funny enough, when I was like, so I grew up playing soccer, and as a kid, my dream was always to go play soccer for Stanford, and then professionally afterwards. So Stanford was always like, I mean, it's obviously like a great school. My dad also went there for grad school, and local, so it was like always kind of like a school that I like was always on my radar as I was thinking about colleges. And yeah, was fortunate enough to have like a really great season my senior cross country season in high school, and so I was recruited to run for them. And yeah, it was definitely like the coaches that were there when I started, I really, really liked. And so it was there was a later coaching change, but it was cool to be close to home and like still be able to do a lot of things that I was doing in high school, like in terms of like outdoors activities. And obviously the team was top notch. So
yeah, amazing.
Cool to train with a lot of other really good runners.
Did you ever, you're somewhat in the ballpark of age wise of Garrett Corcoran. Did you guys ever race each other when he went in the Pac-12?
I don't think we ever raced each other. Funny enough, though, I actually did do an official visit to Cal. Yeah. And so I did meet him and interact with him there. But we may have overlapped 1 year. I think he may have been, yes, we did overlap. So my freshman year, it was his last year at Cal. And so we did race at Pac-12s and nationals that year in cross country.
What a small world. That's so crazy.
Yeah, I feel like there's like more and more like NCAA people that are like transitioning to trails, which is cool.
Yeah. But Dan Kurtz was in the mix during that time as well. Like I think he's a little bit older. I can't remember.
Yeah, we didn't overlap in college.
No. Okay. So there's a few, but it's just interesting. Yeah. How many folks at that higher D1 level, like the, strong Pac-12 and some of those bigger schools. Yeah. Really coming out and showing up on the trails now, which is very entertaining. It's kind of interesting. Did you, on that thread, like, were you aware that like trails could be like a thing around by the time you were coming out, or was it more so the trail team that kind of showed you that like this could be like a career?
No, so for me, it was like basically from day one of college, my dream was to run professionally on the trails, post-collegiately. So it was actually kind of an interesting story because as I mentioned, like I, didn't grow up on social media or like on my phone at all. So I didn't really have any connection to the running world in terms of like being able to discover the competitive side of trail running. But I spent my entire childhood like running on trails, like even long before I was a runner, like, I was just bombing these technical descents because it was fun. And when I started college, Megan Roche was doing her PhD research on the Stanford team. And so I met the Roches that way. And that was what kind of opened my eyes to like that, competitive trail running actually did exist. And, from that was kind of like an aha moment where I'd never really thought about running professionally before then. But as soon as I realized that running professionally on the trails was a potential career path, it was like, oh, this is like absolutely what I want to do. Like, this is the dream. And so like throughout college, that was like all I was thinking about.
Wow, dude. So shout out to Megan and David for they've brought so many new people and so many interesting characters into the sport. I love how much like recruitment and overlap that there's been. So that is really cool that like you knew that this was the thing. It's funny. I meet so many people that are like, oh, you know, I was on YouTube and I saw a video of Anton running shirtless on the Grand or on Long's Peak. And it's like, that's got what people got, you know, what got them excited about the sport. But it's interesting to you that like you got to meet one of the, I mean, obviously David is an extremely crazy good athlete. So was Megan in her own right, but like it's two of the best coaches in the sport, to be able to kind of like lure you in. So that's interesting. Like, so did it ever cross your mind to possibly like want to continue onto the track or in some other way, maybe like transition onto the roads, or it was just always trail?
It was pretty much always trails for me. You know, I think like if I'd been offered a pro road contract coming out of college, I think I probably would have accepted, but trail running and mountain running is really what I find what is most meaningful to me, because it kind of revolves around all the things that I would be doing anyway and that I love most and that I'm most passionate about. Track is like, I don't know, that's much less appealing to me, both by the nature of it, and I'm also not that good at it. I just don't have that much leg speed, so like I've never closed faster than a 63 in anything longer than a mile. It was always very frustrating for me in like a lot of these NCAA like 10K races, for example, where it's like you just have this big pack of guys that's going around the track for, you know, 24 laps, and then it all comes down to who can kick the fastest on the last lap. And I've just never had that leg speed. You know, I feel like I could keep going, but I can't turn over past a certain point. And so that was kind of the appeal, another part of the appeal of like these longer races that are more about how long you can suffer for 2 hours.
Fair enough. You're an interesting person to me because you come from such a high caliber background, you know, cross country, track and field, obviously a strong D1 pedigree where it's so performance based. And obviously you race a ton of sub ultra races, which are extremely performance based as well. But you also strike me with this, there's this dichotomy of you of like also loving adventure and just loving spending time in the mountains. Does that bring any interest in like potential FKTs in the future? Is there anything like any like up down mountain classic, like something like the Grand or something that is like very interesting to you from peak perspective, that also has a ton of adventure that maybe calls to you?
Oh, absolutely. I can go on about this for a long time. I have probably like a multi-page document of these like mountain projects and FKTs that I just want to go after at some point. I think, you know, I think if I hadn't gotten injured at the end of my first trail season, you would have definitely seen me doing a lot of that in 2024. You know, I think, I mean, the Grand that you just brought up, like I pitched that to Brooks, like within like a month of signing that it was something that I wanted to do. You know, Mount Shasta was like my first, like when I climbed it from the north side back in 2019 or 2020 or something, that was like my first like really big mountain. And like from that day, like I've been like, God, I absolutely want to go for the FKT on that at some point. And there's just like so many other ones that I can just keep going on. But yeah, it's definitely something that I want to make time for in my schedule in future years, so that my year just isn't solely about racing. It's also about this adventure aspect and, you know, doing these really cool things in the mountains.
It's interesting, right? Like you've seen, you know, in years past, like Michelino with the Grand, right? Then you see Nadir kind of chasing Killian's record on the Matterhorn. I just find it really interesting because it's not something we see a ton of on our sub ultra scene, where athletes are kind of mixing it up in both the high caliber FKT scene, like that form of expression, if you will, as well as maybe racing on the Cirque series or the Golden Trail series or these more competitive racing series. you don't see a lot of athletes doing a ton of both. More so it's an athlete going and doing just the series. Like for instance, like Remy LaRue, your teammate, I think he raced like 26 times already this season. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot.
He's got to be super tired. But like I think, and you tell me this, do you think a world exists where you can kind of have both in the future of the sport, where you can have this dichotomy of being able to express yourself by doing, really cool ridge link ups and FKTs, things that, are a little more expressive than just a race, for instance, like, but also be able to race. Do you think that a world exists where you can do both as a professional?
Absolutely. And I think like, for me personally, at least, like that is the ideal world. I think those projects are the kind of things that keep you energized and keep you just really jazzed about the sport and running and performing in the mountains, especially when they have like personal significance. I think that's probably one of the things that leads to a lot of longevity in the sport, from a mental standpoint, at least, is being able to pursue your own projects. And I think, as you mentioned, one of the reasons, maybe we haven't seen as much of that in the past is I think there's definitely, more financial incentive with how contracts are structured to, go to these high performing races and do well. So I think it comes down to like the athlete kind of making the conscious decision to pursue those things and to like, maybe put a little bit of pressure on the brand to support those things. But I think the sport is absolutely going in that direction. I mean, I think, outdoor storytelling has always been something that I've been fascinated by and that I think is like super cool and that I think is like definitely growing a lot. And I think the sport is heading in a direction where I think there's going to be a little bit more space for that. And there's going to be more interest for that, especially as the technology to film these feats keeps getting better. I think, those are the stories that are going to inspire day-to-day people more than, watching this race.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I also think that's how we attract new people into the sport. I think it's how you sell shoes. I think there's just a lot of, I think it's a win-win from a brand's perspective of storytelling to be able to, talk about both, but it would be cool to see. I don't know if cool is the right word. I think it would be exciting to see as the sport grows and develops and as we professionalize more as a sport to have that dichotomy to be able to do both. Let me pivot really quick. I want to talk to you about Brooks because you're a member of the Brooks team. I have to say, if there's any team that deserves their flowers, especially over this year, it's just been the amount of subaltra athletes and the amount of investment that they've put into our sport, especially on the American side this year, that it's been so visible with athletes like Sydney Peterson, Taylor Stack, Courtney Coppinger, yourself, and there's plenty others I haven't even mentioned. But it's just been so cool to see like the team explode and really come onto the scene this year. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like being on a team or being on that team and just what it's like running for that brand?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Brooks is like definitely has a special place in my heart. I think, they're one of those brands where they make good shoes, but they're also a great company and they really treat their athletes well. And I think they're also one of the brands that has definitely invested most in the sub ultra space, which I think the sub ultra space is going to grow a lot over the next couple of years. And it's going to see a lot more, high caliber NCAA people entering the space and a lot more like fandom from people that maybe typically follow track and road. But yeah, it's just been so cool to see the team grow and to have this really strong team community. Like the Brooks team is just the best. Like we're just like all so supportive of each other and really, really great team culture. And Brooks definitely puts a lot of effort into that with getting team camps organized for us so we can spend time with each other. And Brooks is a great brand.
So cool. What's the new shoe you guys dropped? I haven't got a chance to see it in the wild yet, but I've seen Remy in it a few times. I've seen Dan run in it. What's it called?
So we have the Cascadia Elite is going to come out in 2026. And that's going to be Brooks's carbon plated trail shoe, which, I've definitely enjoyed the runs that I've done in it so far.
Very cool. Very cool. No, I appreciate you being candid about it. It's interesting to me, just like the investment and just the amount, like in a sport where I feel like we can have both, it seems like I see a lot of brands, and this is okay, like there's nothing wrong with it, but I just see a lot of brands with a very heavy ultra focus. And I just think there's so much to be told, such a good story to be talked about when it comes to these VKs, the mountain classics, even up to the marathon and the Golden Trail Series races. Like there's a lot of discussion to be had there, a lot of stories to be told. And it's cool to see a brand and hopefully more brands start to invest that way and support more of the athletes in the space. Especially because, it's like we have so much depth. And I don't want to say it's more depth than ultra. It's just a different sport. It's a different conversation. It's just that I've found more and more athletes to be unsponsored on the sub ultra end. Whereas I feel like if someone cranks one out of the park on the ultra end, it's very easier. I've seen them get contracts quicker. Whereas on the sub ultra side, I see people get contracts not as fast. It takes a lot longer. Have you noticed that? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think, the roots of trail running are ultra races. And so I think a lot of brands are still stuck in that old way of thinking of, trail running is ultra running. And if we want to have trail running athletes, like they should be doing ultras. But yeah, I mean, I think the landscape is definitely changing. And yeah, I think I agree with you. I do think I think historically it's been a lot harder for athletes to get sponsored in the sub ultra space. I think that is about to change. And I think it may soon maybe be easier. Just with like Golden Trail Series just really pushing for more media coverage in that space. I think maybe one of the reasons, it could be easier to get sponsored in ultra running is because you just can't race as much.
Yeah.
And so when you're towing the line of these big races, like there's inevitably going to be a couple of the best people in the world that aren't there because they're focusing on another race that might be like 3 months away, but they can't do 200 milers like back to back like that, or they choose not to try to really focus on the other one. Whereas most sub ultra races, like most Golden Trail races, like you're going to have almost everybody lining up and going for it at each one of those races. So it's harder to have like a seemingly breakout performance in that space when everybody is doing all the races.
Yeah. That's a really good way to put it. That's a great perspective. It's I don't know. It's really cool. And you hit on something that I really appreciate too, is you said something in regards to the fandom, growing the fandom. The fandom of the sport has got to grow. I mean, that's like kind of one of my missions with this podcast is to continue to develop and like get people excited about our sport, as it continues to grow and develop. What do you think we can do, not just as athletes, but as people in the sport with a voice? Like how does the fandom continue to grow? Like what are your thoughts on that?
I think it all comes down to telling good stories. I think that's what people are interested in these days, or just in general, is people, what attracts people is real stories of real people accomplishing like really cool things. And I think Golden Trail has done a good job at that.
Very good.
With trying to bring in like kind of having these like characters in the Golden Trail Series that they follow and that like people can like be more intrigued. Like it's almost like a reality TV show. And sometimes I do think they push it too far. And they definitely like try to pit people against each other. But I do think that, they're onto something there where, people are attracted to is these like cool stories. And yeah, I mean, media coverage too of sub ultra races is just very exciting if you can get like photographers to film like some of the technical descent portions. And I'm going a little bit on a tangent here, but I think one of the other really cool aspects of trail racing compared to like track or road is that you have like the races. If there was a way to like film continuously, I think the races would be a lot more exciting, because it's not like when you're off the back in a track race or a road race, like it's pretty much over. Like the people that are pushing the pace up front are going to keep pushing the pace up front, and people are just going to progressively drop off. But in a trail race, you have these constant fluxes as the terrain changes, where somebody's a better climber, somebody's a better descender, somebody's a better technical descender, somebody's a better steep climber versus like a runnable section. And so, you can have these constant place changes throughout the race. You can have people making up, 1 or 2 minutes of time on a descent or on a climb. And so I think it just makes it a lot more exciting to watch. And I think that aspect of racing needs to be highlighted more, in my opinion.
Yeah. What? I think it's the showing the stories of how it's unfolding during the race. Like, for instance, it could be as short as a VK or as long as something in the Golden Trail that does a really good job about that. But I also think, too, there's a lot to be told about the athlete stories. Like, I find it so bizarre that, like, you find how you have someone in the sport like Joe Gray, who's been in the sport forever, right? Has won more things than anyone else. And yeah, the dude's got like, I don't know, 15,000 followers. But like, you look at someone like Killian, who's got like almost 1 million followers or over, something like that. And it's just like, well, the stories were told through Solomon TV really well for someone like Killian to build this aura and this mythos of who this human was and is and what he continues to do. Whereas I almost feel like there was less storytelling on someone like Joe, so people don't really know as much about him as they should. And so with that, like, I just think that there's so much opportunity there to talk about the stories of these folks and, what goes into these performances on race day and then what it looks like on race day. Even if you have a bad day or if you have a good day, there's just a lot there to be told. And I think Ultra just does such a damn good job of capturing that. And that's something we need to roll into the sport. And I think it's almost an easier sell on the sub ultra side because the races are shorter, that it's something easier to talk about. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the other interesting things with Killian too, is I think, the things he does outside of races, I think that's what adds to his, his like legendary status among people that aren't even necessarily runners.
Yeah.
Is all these adventures that he plans out and is super passionate about that he does between races. And I think, yeah, that's the reason that he has kind of risen to the point that he has in terms of like social media followers and whatnot. People like stories and adventures.
And I think he's an iconoclast in a lot of ways where he's challenged the norms where, people go to ultra and stay in ultra. People go in sub ultra and a lot of times stay in sub ultra, where Killian has so much range that it doesn't even matter. And then he goes and does something like Everest twice, and it's like, okay, like there is whatever people preconceived as a specific norm or try to fit this athlete in a box. You can't really do that with him because does just about everything, which is, I find super interesting.
Yeah, no. And that's like one of the aspects of him that I admire most is that, like, I'm sure he had a lot of difficult discussions with brands in terms of doing the things that he was passionate about and the things that he wanted to do versus what they wanted him to do. And so, yeah, I think that's another, like I tip my hat to him for that.
He's an interesting character. I got to ask you, I've been asking this everybody lately, as far as like people that have voices in the sport or where they want it to go. So I got to ask you, like, as the sport continues to professionalize and you're very young in the sport, like you've got your best days are still ahead of you and you're just only going to get better and continue to develop. So like, where do you want to see the sport go? Like, do you think it's going to be an Olympic sport? Do you think it's not? Like, what do you want to see out of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be really cool for it to become an Olympic sport and to just get more people excited about it. And like as an athlete, like who doesn't want to compete on the Olympic stage in their sport? Like that would be so cool. I do think though, there's a lot of things that need to be adjusted as the sport grows, as there's more professionalization, as there's more prize money, as there's more media exposure. I do think we're going to need better doping controls within the sport. And I do think, I think the sport is definitely going to change, not necessarily in a bad way, but I think as a community, we're going to have to make conscious choices and conscious decisions to keep the aspects of it that we like value most. I mean, one of the coolest things about trailing is just like showing up to a race and, everybody is just I feel like it's like a community gathering. Like you just know so many people, and yeah, it's the best. And like that aspect might change to a certain extent, where we might see races get bigger and bigger and resemble more road running races. But I think like race directors and athletes and people can, make conscious choices to keep the parts of it that we value most. So I do think it's possible for it to grow and like stay authentic and fun. And yeah,
I think there's room for both. Yeah. I mean, I talk to a lot of people about this because, you hear a lot that's like a very common discussion with monopolization and race monopolization and things like that. I mean, I think it's very possible that we can live in a world where you can have, the little mom and pop race that doesn't even have, they just put numbers on the bibs. There's no timing chips. They're just writing the times down. Like, I feel like that can exist, but also at the same time, we can have our UTMBs and world champs and mountain running championships and things like that. I think we can do both. The one thing that I find interesting is just like the anti-doping conversation, which has been brought up a lot. And it's like, we're at this weird intersection in the sport where we're getting more money, more eyes. There's obvious professionalization, but the drug testing only seems to be out the races. And it's like, okay, well,
and even then,
it's three, if you're lucky, it's three people deep. It's a common conversation. So it's like, I don't know. It's interesting to me. It's funny. This is like a super sideways tangent, but I was just listening to a really good podcast with this guy, Mark Kerr. He used to be a fighter, and he was a UFC fighter back in the day. And like, he was part of this sport during a time where like everybody was on steroids, everybody was on TRT, but they looked back at that like world of their sport. Now, obviously everybody's clean. There's doping controls. It's a completely different sport, but they look back at that time and were like, okay, that was the time that it was in. And I see cycling do that a lot too, where they look back at the Lance days where there was considerable doping and they went through this whole metamorphosis of sport. And they're like, okay, that was the time that it was in. I just hope that we don't look back at our sport one day and are like, okay, like it was kind of the Wild West. We evolved from it, but like that was the time that it was in. Like, I hope that we can like get good control and like actually get like some sort of out of season like testing pool or something, some better thing than we have now. That way we don't have to look back at the sport and be like, oh, it was a rough time.
No, I mean, those are good points. And like, I'd also definitely hope that we can, learn from those historical examples and do the right thing as we kind of approach that point in our sport where it becomes something that we need to be concerned about.
Yeah. Let's talk career. As a young gun in the sport and someone that's had like, a lot of success so far, like how do you view your time in sport? Do you look at it as like a career? Like, I want to do this for 10, 15, 20 years? Like, or do you look at it now from like a day-to-day perspective? Like every day's a gift? Like how do you kind of like conceptualize it?
I mean, I think there's different ways to look at it. I think, I definitely look at it as a career. Like, training is my favorite thing in the world. And I definitely, hope to be able to do it and do it at a high level and compete at all the best races with the best people in the world for as long as I can, hopefully another 10, 15, maybe 20 years, maybe longer than that. Hopefully there's more of a masters division like there is in some track, like USATF stuff at that point. And I can just keep competing as an old man.
That's right.
But I mean, there's definitely also, I think you have to have that vision, but you also have to have just the day-to-day, like just the day-to-day gratefulness of like, you don't want to ever be caught up in thinking too much about the future. Like, every day is indeed like a gift, and like to be able to do it and to live that dream is just like, that's amazing. Like, I mean, the dream is just living every day at a time. And so you have to like focus on that more than the long-term vision. And the long-term vision will happen if you do that.
Yeah. On the topic of races, you've raced series and all, you've raced some of the most competitive races on the planet. Is there anything that specifically calls to you still? Or do you feel like, okay, now that I've raced this, I just want to get back to it and give my best at it? Or is there one specific race that's like, I have to get here?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I definitely would like to race OCC or CCC at some point. I mean, the 50K distance has definitely been calling to me for some time. I mean, I ran my first one at the end of my 2023, which was my first like competitive trail season. And it's just such a cool experience. Like I love sub ultra, but there's something about like, going out there for a long race and even planning for a long race. Like you just lay out all your gels and your drink mix, and you have these like spreadsheets with like what you're going to do. It just feels like such a cool adventure. It feels like you're going on like a Mars mission or something. So I definitely want to do more of that, and keep doing sub ultra stuff. But I am intrigued at dipping my toes in some longer stuff long term. And yeah, I mean, I feel like right now, at least, like UTMB is kind of the Super Bowl of the sport. And so doing something like OCC or CCC at some point would be super cool.
So cool. On the topic of UTMB races, I noticed last year you had thrown down at ETC, and I was super blown away by how competitive it was last year and this year. I know your teammates Dan and Remy mixed it up this year in the top 10. You got fourth last year, or 2024. Did that race stick out to you at all? Like, it seemed like this year it got more buzz than it normally has. And I'm wondering if like maybe UTMB is going to possibly like make a final out of that for like maybe more of the like the 20K or 15K category.
Yeah, I definitely hope that they like grow that race. I mean, funny enough, last year I qualified for OCC by finishing second in Thailand, which was the Asia Pacific major. And I like fully intended to run it. But then with the injury in June, I mean, there was the question of whether I was even going to be able to race in Europe at all in August. And so I ended up dropping down in distance to do ETC. Like, I didn't really have any like super high expectations for it, but yeah, it was like super hype and fun. And I, definitely hope that UTMB invests more into it and kind of grows it so that we see more of the top athletes going there to run it. I think that would be super cool.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, I used it as a huge like research point for like I was just blown away for World's Mountain Classic. Like quite a few athletes that raced ETC just internationally, particularly in Europe and Spain and Italy, like also threw down and did really well at ETC. And I was just like, wow, like the depth there is absolutely insane this year. So yeah, it would be cool to see them like invest in it and grow that race and just like make it a final for, the 15, 20K, or I guess the 20K distance or whatever, or like a true World Mountain Classic final, like on an annual basis, which would be dope. So
yeah, I mean, UTMB is like, I think it would be in their interest to do that. So
yeah. Hopefully
I hope they do.
It'd be cool if the Pilates, hey, if you're listening, by all means. One more race I want to get to that you had done this year was the Rut VK. I would say that was your first one back before Pikes. Is that correct?
It was, yeah. And it was actually my first finish line in 51 weeks.
Wow. That's crazy.
So, because I tried to come back and race UTMB Thailand again at the end of last year, but as soon as we started, like I made it like 20 miles, but as soon as we started going down the steep downhills, the knees started hurting. And so I had to drop out to not like risk any like major long-term things. But yeah, super fun to be back at the Rut this year. I feel like it's a race that just like gets overlooked a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, it's in Montana. There's maybe a little bit less attention on it, but it's like such a fun event and race. And the race directors and the people there are just like so stoked on it and do just such a good job. I got a free mullet over there.
Oh, I like it, dude. Did you get the tattoo yet?
I did not get the tattoo, no. But I did get a free mullet.
Fair enough. That's so cool. Well, you had a great finish there. You got on the podium. It's interesting, man. That race kind of calls to me in the sense where I didn't realize this. It's the second biggest race in the United States. Like from trail race, I should say, outside of Broken Arrow.
But I didn't realize that either.
It's because of to me, I guess it's just because of like where it lands on the weekends wise. Like everybody's competing for prime time because people are either just getting back from UTMB or in that kind of world, or they could be in Europe or there's other things that pop up on the calendar. So the way it's situated in the calendar makes it kind of complex to get there. And it is such a cool race. I don't know. I'm enamored by just like what they put on out there. It's pretty cool.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it is. Yeah, that September month is definitely tough. There's like just so much going on, and like Golden Trail used to have like their North America World Series races in September as well. And so I was like pretty bummed about that, like my first year, because I was like, like I really wanted to go check out the Rut because I've heard like such good things. But yeah, I mean, part of me does wish that there was a little bit more like coordination and collaboration between like race directors to try to like have races, like big races, not land on the same weekend, so that like athletes can like truly go head to head and do like a lot of these like really cool events. But I mean, it is just part of the sport. Like it is kind of a wild west, and like anybody can start like a competitive race series in trail running and call it like the World Series or the whatever. So I think it's a part of the sport that just kind of makes me laugh and is like, yeah, I think it's good. It adds to the character of the sport. And if anything, like sometimes it's nice that you can't do everything in a year, because then you can switch it up more and have different experiences from season to season and year to year. But yeah, Rut is a great race.
It's amazing. I got to ask you this, as someone who I would have, if you were obviously in a healthy year, I would have pegged you as an easy favorite for either the vertical or the mountain classic team, whatever thing you would have chosen to have raced. I would have expected you to have done well. Is that something that's on your radar in the future for maybe 2027, is trying to get on a Team USA?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it was a huge goal this year. Like I had a procedure on my knee in March, and I mean, I literally just put everything into getting back for the Broken Arrow VK in June. Like I initially was also going to try to do the classic, and actually was also going to try to run the short trail. And then I wasn't going to do all three at Worlds, but I just kind of wanted, I was probably going to do two at Worlds. I just kind of wanted to do those races because they're awesome. But yeah, I mean, obviously things didn't work out and I had to get like a follow-up procedure done. But yeah, Worlds is so cool, and it's been amazing to watch everybody crush it over there this past week. So definitely something that my 2027 is going to be focused on.
Dude, this is a crazy question, but you could compete for USA, Canada, or France. Like, that's kind of cool. I hadn't really thought about that. Like, is there, I mean, this is a crazy hypothetical. I mean, obviously France, I know, is like super picky with the way they do their selections, and it's like kind of like a significantly longer process, where I feel like in Team USA, you could just earn your spot. But Canada also might be, if you got options for 2027, man.
I do have options. Yeah. And I represented the US at the 2019 World Cross Country Championships. And so, but that was like over 4 years ago. So if I wanted to, I could switch. I have options.
Free agent,
we'll
man.
see. I think I would most likely France it would be kind of tough just getting to the qualifiers and like doing the selection process. Canada would definitely be an option, I think. We'll see.
I mean, hey, yeah, you got more options than most people, so it's not a bad thing. I gotta ask you this: any takeaways from Worlds weekend? Was there anything that stuck out to you that you thought was really cool or interesting? Any performances? I don't know. I had a lot of fun covering it and just kind of just keeping an eye on what was going on. I thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the US like really showed up in like all the distances. So that was, super cool to watch. Like a bunch of my teammates and friends just go out and absolutely crush it. And yeah, I think every world championship just keeps getting more competitive. And I think it's exciting for the future of the sport, and definitely makes me excited for future worlds.
Yeah. I think with each one, as it grows, it continues to get more popular. And I think Jim kind of like made it very apparent this year. He's like, I'm not really sure like what this means in the sense, because like we already have a Super Bowl, but this could also be the Super Bowl. So I hope that like by the time 2027 rolls around, like we might have that a little bit more figured out as to like what the actual Super Bowl is in theory.
Definitely. I do think Worlds has room to grow. Like, I think if you look at some of the results of some of the big UTMB races and you look at like the world's short trail and long trail, I think you could make the argument that UTMB, like some of those UTMB races were more competitive and more deep. Part of that could be that, some people, I know some people did UTMB and then didn't race as well as they wanted to at Worlds. Obviously, like that makes sense. Like you ran a really long race like about a month ago. So I think there is room for Worlds to, I think brands need to like put more of an emphasis on it for their athletes of like, when it's a Worlds year, like this is something that is like important and super cool and that we want you to do. Yeah. And so I think that will be a big part of Worlds becoming bigger in the future. And I think, I think they would need to like coordinate with UTMB to, it's interesting too, because like Worlds was at a different time of year back in 2023. It was at the start of the summer, which, for better or for worse, in terms of schedules. There's a lot of things that can be worked out there.
Yeah. And what's good is 2027, it'll be in November. So at least I think that'll make things a little bit easier for folks. I don't know. Maybe people will show up more tired or less tired. It just depends on like where it falls. But I think November is a good enough time to get healthy and, after the UTMB like races. I think one big thing, and I'll leave it on a final note after this, is like, it's just like we need more brands it just needs to be more contracts. Like, I think that's the big thing is the brands need to recognize it. Obviously that's really hard because, mostly everybody's wearing Nike. If you're on the US team, if you are, like it's hard, obviously you can wear your shoes, but we got to figure that out. That way the brands can get behind it and support the athletes individually. And there could be more bonuses and stuff like that for it. You don't need to comment on that one though. We can keep that between us. But yeah, so dude, I got to say, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This is an amazing conversation. I'm wishing you the best of luck on your continued return to the sport and to competition. And I can't wait to see what you're going to do in the next few months, man. Thank you.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. And it's so good to finally be on and having this discussion with you.
Yeah. I can't wait for round 2, man. Appreciate you.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. What an awesome episode. I really want to thank Meika so much for coming on the podcast and just being candid and being open and telling his story and talking about, it's always fun to talk to athletes, not just about running, but about the things that, they like to do outside of running. So I'm really appreciative of the fishing stuff and, just him being candid and talking about himself, which was, I really appreciate. Guys, the best way you can support Meika is to give him a follow on Instagram. You can find him at the handle as well as in the show notes. That's going to be at mountain_man_Meika. That's mountain_man_Meik. Give him a follow. You can also just type in Meikael, Meikael, Beaudoin, Beaudoin- Rousseau, Rousseau. I did my best there to get my French pronunciation down. I need to take some French classes. I'm doing my best, guys. I'm sorry. So guys, like I said, best way to support Meika is to give him a follow and let him know what you guys thought about the episode. I'm sure he would really appreciate your words of encouragement. I mean, you want to talk about someone that's just so mentally strong and to be able to battle back after having so many false starts coming back from injury. And you want to talk about someone with so much potential and so much talent. This guy puts together a healthy season. He's going to be one of the best in the world. So it's pretty cool that we could follow someone like that and just how great he could possibly be in our sport. So definitely want to give him some support. Last but not least, if you guys enjoyed this episode, if you've been enjoying the podcast, please give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you consume your podcast. Like I said, 5-star rating or give us a review. I'd love to know what you guys like about the podcast and what you don't like. It would really mean a lot to me. The feedback is really important so we can make some changes into the future. I always find some good things to make some changes on and go forward. Last but very not least, if you guys enjoyed this episode, want to support the podcast further, you can support us by going to ultimatedirection.com, our brand partner, and check out what they have. The leading company in hydration solutions at the moment. Check Ultimate Direction out. They just dropped a new 6-liter race vest as well as a 12-liter ultra vest. Beautiful aesthetic colorways. They've got some great belts out there, the comfort belt as well as their race belt. in a lot of different sizes and different colors, which is kind of cool. And they just dropped a new quiver for your poles, which is pretty compatible with most vests out on the market. So definitely give those a check out. And if you do purchase anything, use code SteepStuffPod. That's one word, SteepStuffPod, and that'll get you 25% off your cart. So guys, really appreciate it tuning in. Lots of good podcasts down the way, lots of good conversations. We've got Kyle Richardson coming on later this week to talk about his some of his link ups that he's been doing on the bike in the Northeast, amongst many other things, as well as David Hedges, who's going to be coming on pretty soon to talk about his Nolan's 14 record. So, guys, really appreciate it. Thanks so much for tuning in.